today's video, we're going to be going over the Samantha Marie design Isla Leotard and Swimsuit. So for mine, I'm going to be doing the one shoulder sleeveless with bands. So I'm going to do the neck ruffle, leg bands, and neck bands. You really have to pay attention when you're cutting out this pattern in your pattern pieces that you're cutting out the correct things, because there are a ton of options. You can either do sleeveless, sleeves, neckband, lined, and then for the legs you can either do elastic or lined, or you can do bands. So there's a lot of different options to choose from. You just really have to pay attention to where you're cutting and where you're cutting on your pattern. Another little trick that you can do is anytime you're doing neck bands or leg bands, you don't have to cut out only the size that you're working with. What you can do is cut out the full piece with all of the sizes, and then whatever size you're going to make, just fold it down on that line so you don't have to keep cutting out these bands for every size. I have cut out my armband, both of my leg bands, my neck band, my one shoulder ruffle piece, and then my front and my back bodice pieces. For your bodice, you're going to lay your pieces right sides together, and then we're going to sew at the shoulder up here. After you sew at your shoulder, you're going to sew down both sides of your bodice, and I put little pins here so I know where to stop, and then you're going to close the bottom crotch. For our bands, what we're going to do is we are going to fold these right sides together like this, and then we're going to fold it in half, and then we're going to serge right here, and we are going to do that for all of these band pieces. Once you have all of your bands sewn, now we're going to start with our leg bands and sew those on. I'm going to match up my band seam with the seam on my crotch. Anytime I'm doing any kind of bands, what I do is I will slide my garment over my serger like this. It just makes it a lot easier for me as I'm sewing and to make sure that I'm stretching the correct amount. Once you start sewing on your leg band, you're going to want to only stretch your leg band to the next place that you have it pinned. After you do your first leg band, go ahead and do your second one, and then we're going to go ahead and move up to our arm band. Go ahead and pin on your armband. I do the seam on my band with the side seam of my leotard. And then what you're going to do is sew that on in the round. After you have your armband complete, now it is going to be time to do our neckband. Now for your one shoulder ruffle piece, you're going to have two pieces for that. So you're going to lay those right sides together, and then what you're going to do is you're going to sew them together at the sides on this end and your other end down here. Now we're going to gather our ruffle. So I'm going to use my sewing machine for this. I'm going to use my longest straight stitch setting, and we're going to start here, get as close to the edge as you can, and we're going to sew this all the way around. We're going to stop before we get to the beginning, and we're not going to backstitch. Here we're coming to where we started, and we're going to leave a little gap there. We don't want to close that off. We are going to pull this off and leave a pretty long tail here. And then we're going to do a second row right under it. Once you have your 2 rows of gathering stitches in, now we're going to gather. To gather this, what you're going to do is take your 2 strings and just gently pull. And that is what will create your gathers all the way around. The goal for your gathers is to make your ruffle the same size as your neckband opening, because that's where we're going to attach it. There are different methods that you can use for gathering. This is just what I use and what's easiest for me. Once you have your ruffle gathered all the way around, you're going to lay that on top of your bodice, and you're going to adjust your gathers so that your ruffle is the same size and length as your neck opening is. You will have to adjust this, kind of open up your gathers a little bit, but just make sure that they look even. Now I match up my side seams of my ruffle with the side seams of my bodice and my shoulder seam. Now there's two different ways that you can attach this. So the first way is with your bodice inside out, you place your ruffle inside and you want the wrong side of your ruffle to be up against the right side of your bodice, so that when you flip this right side out, your ruffle is also facing right side out. Now the other way that you can do this is lay your bodice right side out and place your ruffle over top of it, also right side out. I line up the side seams of my ruffle with the side seams of my bodice, and then that other ruffle side seam with the shoulder of my bodice. I forgot to do this when I was sewing mine, but if you're gonna serge it on, I would make the width of your stitches smaller, because when you go back to add on your neckband, you don't want to be able to see your previous serge seams. Or what you can do is just use a straight basting stitch and just put it on that way before you add your neckband. Or some people might put your ruffle on your bodice and then go ahead and put your neckband on as well and sew it all in one together. But when I've tried to do that in the past, it's just a little bit tricky because you're trying to get like 4 layers of fabric in one seam. So this is just easier for me if I add my ruffle and then I go back and add my neckband on. I'm going to start serging where the side seam of my bodice is and where I started and stopped my gathers. Because we left a little opening right here, there might not be any gathers right there. So I will pull my strings and just kind of manipulate gathers with my fingers, and then just make sure that all of your gathers are nice and even before you start serging here. Again, if you're going to use a serger, make sure that you change the width and make it smaller. So there's my ruffle. Now that it's on, we're going to go ahead and add our neckband. I have my neckband pinned on, and now we're going to serge that in the round. As you're sewing on your neckband, make sure that you're only stretching your neckband and not the entire bodice. After your neckband is sewed on, all you have to do is flip that up, and then if there are any gathering stitches or other stitches that are showing, just take a seam ripper and pull those out. This is what I was talking about before with making your stitch width smaller, because you can still kind of see a little bit of thread right here from where I serged on my ruffles. So just be mindful of that if you're going to use your serger to attach that. And that's it. When you're all finished, this is what it will look like. If you watch this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. I will be doing more Samantha Marie Designs patterns.